Our guest right now does a great job talking all things Jets and NFL. It's a Football Friday, Jets in Action Sunday against the Atlanta Falcons. And we say hello to the host of the Turn on the Jets podcast, Will Parkinson, who's kind enough to join us. Will, hope you had a great Thanksgiving. Thanks for coming on DNR with us this morning.
Thanks. You as well, Jake.
So for you, Will, Jets at 2-9, and I got to ask you about the debate that the entire fan base is having. Tank versus no tank. Are the Jets, in your opinion, better off losing games here down the stretch, or do you still think there's something to be said for winning games here over the Jets' final 6 weeks?
I think specifically the next 4 weeks, you want to see how they compete and how they can win games. I think, at the end of the year, it's a Week 18 situation, and it's a difference in picking one versus picking three. And it's a meaningless game for Buffalo. It's a meaningless game for the Jets. I understand the concept of, hey, it's 1 week. It's not going to change much. But, Jake, I think the next couple of weeks, specifically the next 2 weeks, they've played much better, I think, overall the last 5 weeks-ish. I would say, and you want to see what this coaching staff looks like. You want to see what some of these young players, how if you can continue to evaluate the John Mechie's of the world, the A.D. Mitchells of the world, the Azari Thomases of the world, and you want to see these guys continue to learn how to win. That's why I still think it was important that they beat the Browns. It's important that they figure out a way to beat the Bengals, especially on the backs of a lot of their young players, making impact plays and guys that'll be here. So Aaron Glenn's got to learn how to win as a coach as well and continue to instill that culture. So for right now, I don't know, it's an Atlanta team coming in here. Wouldn't say a lot about this coaching staff. They fell flat on their face and got embarrassed 27-9. I think I would say you'd be concerned about not only the roster but also the coaching staff. So for right now, I think it's still important to win football games. I know people won't want to hear that, and I don't think this is a draft where it's worth the tank wars and things of that nature. But again, I'd understand maybe a Week 18 situation, but for right now, I think it's important to continue to try to win football games.
It's such a fine line because on one hand, you do want to see this coaching staff look competent. You want to see young players play well. But I think what you don't want is an ugly game where you win 13-9. You don't really learn much about your team. And that's the fine line of you want to see competency and guys play well, but you almost want the Ravens game over the course of these final 6 weeks here where you're playing well competitively, you're in the game, but you just don't have enough at the end. But it's tough because, to your point, the teams the Jets play coming up, Will, you could speak more about this. They're in the Jets weight class, so I do expect the Jets to have a chance to win some games here.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think I just settle on this, Jake, where if they win the next couple of games, and I don't know, they finish the season 5-12, and you see stark improvement, which I think you have seen improvement over the last month to 5 weeks around this entire staff. I still think Wilkes is obviously a liability, and I think Glenn's starting to figure it out. Now, do I think all that matters is wins? Yes. So until he wins football games, and yes, they played hard against the Ravens, and they should have probably won, but and different things like that. Yeah, I totally understand that. So I don't know. To me, they finished 5-5 over the last 10, and it's on the backs of the young players, as you mentioned. If Tyrod Taylor goes out there and it's the reason they win the next 2 games, that doesn't really do it for you as much as, wow, we saw, another big performance out of some of these young receivers. The offensive line played well. On defense, Azari Thomas comes up with, an interception, which the Jets never turned the football over. So that seems like a pipe dream. But the point is, that would show a lot more than just, yeah, we did a great job because Alan Lazard scored a touchdown. That's not doing it for you. In terms of their opponents, yeah, Jake, I fully expect the Jets to win on Sunday. Post-Thanksgiving, Kirk Cousins outside in a rainy, messy game at MetLife in the end of November. No Drake London. Obviously no Michael Penix. This is going to be one of those games where I kind of think the Falcons have been spiraling and the Jets have been playing better football as of late. I would expect the Jets to win on Sunday. The next 2 games, again, I understand this. People from the tank perspective won't want to hear this, but I don't know, the Jets win back-to-back games here, and they can pick up divisional win. I know Miami's not very good. They have been playing better of late as well. They've never beaten to us. So, in some ways, I'd like to see the Jets get a division win and see if they can kind of cut their chops in the division. Anything happens when New England comes in. But, yeah, these next 2 opponents are, a lot of talent on both those teams. Big names guys like Bijan Robinson, obviously Drake London if he were to be playing, people of that Kyle Pitts, et cetera. But the Jets should be in Atlanta's weight class enough to to get one at home on Sunday and get their third win in the season.
Well, you brought up Steve Wilkes. I think Aaron Glenn is not going anywhere. I honestly, at this point, would be surprised if Tanner Engstrand, the offensive coordinator, went anywhere as well. But Wilkes, and I bring him up because you mentioned him, the Jet defense, they have one turnover on the entire season. And even a team last night watching the Cincinnati Bengals on Thanksgiving, their defense is dead last in basically every category. But here they are in a game having 5 turnovers against the Ravens. And again, the Jets have won the entire year. They don't have an interception yet, which breaks an NFL record. Your thoughts on Wilkes down the stretch here? Do you think he's coaching for his job, or do you think Glenn, in his mind, has already made the decision that Steve Wilkes is not going to be brought back as the defensive coordinator?
Yeah, this really feels like the Anthony Lynn situation in Detroit in 2021, which Glenn was a part of with Dan Campbell. And, again, everyone, we've heard about the example of Detroit with Aaron Glenn, probably far too many times for your liking and many others, and the improvement there. But, Anthony Lynn was a former head coach, former, veteran assistant, obviously was part of the Jet staffs back in the late, 2009, 2010 teams before he went over to the Chargers and Bills and et cetera. But, they weren't very good on offense. And Dan Campbell, again, brought over the veteran head coach, assistant to kind of help him get, his feet under him. And he fired him, after the year, even though he's obviously a well-respected guy, well-liked. And he brought in Ben Johnson, Jake, and that was able to help really spark a turnaround with Detroit, other than, in addition to obviously adding to the roster and guys starting to play better in the culture setting. And so you just wonder, does this happen again? Does this happen for the Jets in a positive way of, Wilkes did his job. It was the right process. It was probably the wrong hire, ultimately at the end of the day. Wilkes, again, helped Glenn to be able to, kind of focus on being the CEO and things of that nature, and he could take over the defense. But this feels like a team that could use a Jim Leonard, who's been an excellent, assistant in Denver. There's obviously a relationship there with Darren Muji and Sean Payton and Chris Banjo, et cetera. And Glenn, I think could use that maybe fresher mind. Wilkes has done it for a really long time, and he's had some really impressive years throughout his career. But this year, with the lack of turnovers, it just feels like the scheme feels a bit outdated. The blitz packages, especially on third down, very predictable. They don't really ever get home. I think that would be a worthwhile to kind of maybe give Wilkes the promotion upstairs while it's really a demotion, or maybe he takes some time away, from football. But I think that defensive coordinator would be the place I would be looking to add on this staff, whether it's a Jim Leonard, does someone like a Jim Schwartz or Wink Martindale, kind of those veteran names, Shake Freed. Is a guy like Al Harris that's in Chicago who was fantastic with the Cowboys and obviously a former great player as well. He's a guy who prides himself on, these DBs creating turnovers. You remember, Trey Diggs and Deron Bland both led the league in interceptions. When Al Harris was there, magically the Cowboys do not have him there anymore. He's gone to Chicago, and they now have the 3 league leaders in interceptions. So those are just some names I would watch if the Jets were to make a move, at defensive coordinator.
You sold me on Jim Leonard, but by the way, Will, someone on YouTube, Jay Litt, had a great comment when you said his name. I mean, Jim Leonard right now would be an upgrade at safety based on what we have seen from the Jets. Again, how is it?
An upgrade at safety.
You would. Hey, don't sell yourself short. Will's a former Division I football player. But, I mean, Will, again, the turnover thing is just mind-boggling. To not have an interception 11 games into the year, to have one takeaway all year when the next closest teams in the league have at least 6. Cincinnati last night, they're awful on defense. They had 5 last night against Lamar and the Ravens. To me, it's just inexplicable. Is that on Wilkes, Glenn? Is that on the personnel? Bad luck? Like, what do you attribute the one turnover through 11 game stat to the most?
Yeah, I think it's a mixture of everything. I think, first of all, it's a mentality you teach within your defense. I remember I asked Ashton Davis about this last year because he was kind of the one guy over the last couple of years. Not saying he was a star player by any means, but he was the one guy I felt like he always came up with turnovers. I'm like, hey, man, look, why are you able to create turnovers and it doesn't seem like anybody else getting? He's like, I just have a mentality that, the football is mine and I want to take risks and things like that. The Jets don't take risks. They're it's a very conservative, it's always, Jake, 4 rushers, 1 guy, whether it's a DB or a linebacker, blitzes, and everybody else is kind of doing their thing. I feel like the scheme doesn't really put them in a great spot. From getting a turnovers perspective, I think it's what you're taught. I think as well, in the Saleh era, it was a very much bend, don't break mentality, and you kind of have to coach that out of folks if you want to be this, hyper-aggressive defense. That's why I just think, to me, Yeah, it's, even in the New England game, Jake, it was kind of an encapsulation of why they don't create turnovers. Drake May throws up a deep ball. Quantez Stiggers plays it perfectly. Tony Adams plays it perfectly. And these guys collide, injure Quantez Stiggers, and Tony Adams drops the football. It's like you can't really make it up. So to me, I don't see the Jets enough, when running backs have the ball, trying to punch it out and taking risks there. Quincy does it sometimes. You've seen Sherwood do it from time to time, but they don't do enough of that. There's not enough, looking for a kind of a strip sack type of situation. So it also doesn't help when you don't have a lead. It's harder for pass rushers to pin their ears back. Quarterbacks don't, feel like they have to take as many risks. So it is a game flow situation as well. But to me, I think this comes down to you got to continue to get the right guys in the building from a scheme perspective that both want to try to cause turnovers and also teaching guys. I know it gets taught, but it's an emphasis on, to me, like we want it to be the high variance team. Jake, I thought this was going to happen. I thought the Jets were going to be a defense that was maybe middle of the pack in terms of total defense and things of that nature, but a team that took the football away a ton, a lot of sacks, a lot of big game-changing plays. That's why I thought they could be a team that could be a little bit spunky. And unfortunately, they've kind of been the solid defense just with less talent, and they don't turn the football over, which is the direct opposite of what you want when you have a Justin Fields-led team.
No doubt. Will Parkinson with us here. He's the host of the Turn on the Jets podcast, part of the Badlands Podcast Network. Will, as far as Darren Muji goes, the one positive I could point to this year from a Jet perspective is that I think the in-season trades that Muji has made, not even talking about the haul they got back in the Quinnen Williams and Sauce Gardner deals, but some of the throw-ins in those trades, being able to get John Mechie, being able to get A.D. Mitchell, being able to get Jawan Briggs and Harrison Phillips over the summer, the Brownlee move in late September helping the secondary. They've all really worked out, and that has been impressive because they have not given up really anything to get some of those guys I just mentioned. Your thoughts on what that means and just your general thoughts on Jets GM Darren Muji, who works in a tandem with Glenn, but ultimately, if the Jets are going to try and get their quarterback, there's a good chance they might have to trade up, and this is the GM that's going to be on the phone with other teams trying to make those deals.
Yeah, they've done a really good job. But I think they treat this year as year zero, and I think people, again, we can talk a lot about the verbiage that kind of came out of the building, starting from the combine, probably through the beginning of training camp, where trying to get everyone excited and all those different things, and I get it, and clearly it was year zero in a lot of ways, meaning everyone was in an evaluation phase. So guys came in the spring, retained some of the holdovers and things like that because you want to see what those guys are. Are they part of our culture? They fit our scheme? Are they our guys type of situation? And, I think they got through the beginning of the summer and said, wow, we have a kicking problem. Like these young guys are not going to be good enough, proactive. They went out and got Nick Folk. Nick Folk has been amazing. I think they're at camp, guys like Derek Nandi and Jake Coward and these other guys, not good enough at defensive tackle. And instead of just kind of something that I think really frustrated you, me, and many others during the Saleh era was we'd see a problem. We'd be like, wow, I don't understand why they're not addressing this. Like safety's still an issue. Why is Tony Adams still playing? And again, he's a bad example because he quite literally is still playing, but they wouldn't make adjustments. And I think it was impressive for Darren Muji to go out and say, Harrison Phillips is still a really good run defender. He's going to give you not a ton of juice in the pass game, but man, he's top half of the league in run stops this year and really good leader. He's a culture guy. We'll take on a couple extra $1 million and we don't have to give up much. And same thing with Jawan Briggs has been a great find, Jake. He's probably the one, honestly, that's played the best over the course of this season. And he's a 22, 23-year-old guy. I think that's been a great move. Brownlee, again, shrewd move to get a guy they had some, good college tape and had some NFL tape on. So I like their approach of continuing to use day three assets where, frankly, day three in the draft this year was not their best moment. I think rounds 1 through 3 they hit. Malachi Moore is probably a serviceable to decent starter. The other 3 guys do not look great thus far. It's still time, but not the finest move. So, they have all this cap space, Jake. You can't sign everybody in free agency. That's just not how it works. Your co-host on Sundays did a really good job of this. Went after guys like Antonio Cromartie and Braylon Edwards and Chris Jenkins and Santonio Holmes and all these different guys was using day 3 picks and used their cap space to acquire really strong veterans that for whatever reason might be, on the outs with their team. I'd like to see Darren Muji continue to do that as well as add, with those premium picks in free agency. So, yeah, it seems like the extensions did exactly what they wanted in a lot of ways, right? Garrett's been a star, and Sauce they extended, but they put it out in that contract. They could trade him, and they acquired 2 ones and 80 Mitchell. So Muji's been good so far. The big test, Jake, as you mentioned, is going to be the next 12 months. How does he add during the free agency period? What extensions similar to guys like Brees, potentially Tittman, McDonald, Jermaine? Those guys are kind of be all in that quote unquote extension conversation. Brees being the priority, and then how's he handle the draft? Does he hit on quarterback? Because all this stuff is great, but the reason that everyone thinks Sean Payton turned everything around in Denver, they build up their roster, Jake. They hit on the quarterback, and whether you think Bo Nix is good or not, it doesn't matter. They win football games, right? So that's at the end of the day he's going to be judged on. But I like the progress he's shown as a guy who first time in the chair. Him and Glenn have done a good job from a not kind of resting on your laurels, because they shouldn't. They're 2-9, and making adjustments to try and get better and younger with this team.
This final question, Will, is depressing, but this is the life that we are currently living in as Jet fans. If the draft was today, and I know the order is going to change, the evaluations of these players is going to change a billion times from now until late April when the draft actually is. But if the draft was today and the Jets right now are on the clock with the number 4 pick, what to you would be the move that Darren Muji and Aaron Glenn would be making with that selection?
Arch? No, I'm just kidding. No, I would say if it's gone to my head today, for lack of a better reference, I think Mendoza, if he doesn't, fall apart during the college football playoff and some of these bigger games, he'll likely go 1-1 in some capacity. So if the Jets, they put it for, I'll say they draft Carnell Tate out of Ohio State, Jake, and there's a bridge option to be had with a quarterback, and they've already addressed a veteran from some aspect, whether it's, I don't know, Mac Jones or Brock Purdy or Tanner McKee or Jacoby, someone in that ilk, and they address wide receiver and edge rusher, or wide receiver and linebacker in round 1, and they build up the roster, and they use the 3 first-round picks in 2027. They're good enough. They win 7 or 8 games, and they show enough progress, but trade up for their guy in 2027. That's just gun to my head right now, but there's a good chance it could be a guy like Ty Simpson. Could be a guy, like Jaden Mayava in the back of round 1. There's a lot of options, but I don't know. Right now, I say they finish out the receiver room, and everyone gets excited about the weapons and offensive line for the next young quarterback.
That's interesting. I was not expecting that answer. I guess my follow-up on that before we wrap here, Will, is if the Jets do exactly that, right? They wait till 27 to get their quarterback. Are you sure that Glenn and Muji would be even here to make that selection in 27? Because say they finish with 4 wins this year, and the next year they're a little better. They go, from 4 to 6 wins. That'd be 10 wins through 2 years. I know they have the picks, and they sold Woody on probably this plan to build up the team with all these picks they now have. But would they be guaranteed at that point the opportunity to even get their quarterback in 27? And then it's like, okay, you're in year 3, coach and GM, but the quarterback's in year 1. Do you have to win with a rookie quarterback, which is tough to do? Like, just the entire timeline of this regime, how does that potentially impact the Jets' thought process, whether to be aggressive this year for the quarterback versus waiting, as you outlined there, through 2027?
Yeah, I think they'd have to do such a good job of building up the roster and feel confident that, they really are a quarterback away. And I know people don't want to hear that, and I totally understand it, because people have heard that under Robert Saleh. They heard it under, pretty much every GM for the last 15 years. But, no, they'd have to do such a good job, Jake, and they'd have to show it. They'd have to feel like they can win. They could be a wild card team, with I'm just using Brissett as the example. Obviously, I don't even know if he'll be on the move realistically. Keep me away from Kyler Murray. But yeah, I would get the concern. I guess my counter theoretically would be, if the Jets built up the roster so well and these guys still couldn't figure out how to win, wouldn't you be an attractive destination theoretically in a year's time with 3 first-round picks and still a ton of cap space? For the, I don't know, some reason someone, I don't know, I don't know who the name is, but that guy shakes free, and Glenn shows, hey, even with all this talent, I can't figure it out. So, I would understand that, and it'd be risky. It'd be pretty ballsy if you're Aaron Glenn and Darren Muji to punt on quarterback again. But unless they love one of these guys, and they're full bloom in love, as Don, LaGreca and Michael Kay like to say, do not force it. If they do, and they love one of these quarterbacks, it's Mendoza, Simpson, Mayava, Dante Moore comes out, and Arch Manning comes. It doesn't matter. If they love one of those guys, take them and go for it and build the rest of the roster. But if they don't, I don't want to see them force it and get themselves in a situation where, everyone's convincing themselves, in this Carolina situation where, Bryce Young's not very good, but we're going to continue to talk ourselves into it because we gave up all these assets. I just don't want to be in that situation, Jake.
Will, always appreciate your time. Great job, and I know you're going to be at MetLife Sunday. You go to basically every game, so I hope the weather's not miserable and you actually watch an entertaining game between the Jets and the Falcons.
Thanks. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody on set, and enjoy, and we'll talk soon.
Will Parkinson at WillPaw11 on X if you want to follow him there, host of the Turn on the Jets podcast. I think to Will's point, he's right. You don't take a quarterback unless you love someone. I just find it hard to believe the Jets, with all these picks, aren't going to be highly tempted to fall in love with one of these quarterbacks. Maybe it won't be, Dave Gettleman full bloom love like he was with Daniel Jones, right? That's the quote that Will referenced that Michael and Don always bring up. But I don't know if they could afford to wait till 2027. If the Jets finish 4-13 this year, and then they follow that up with a 6-win season, let's say, in 2026, 10 wins through 2 years, Aaron Glenn going into year 3, is he getting a crack at a year 3 automatically? You're going to let him then oversee the quarterback selection? I'm not so sure. It's why I think they got to do it this year. I think they made the trades with Quinnen and Sauce and loaded up on these picks because they told Woody Johnson, we're going to get our quarterback for you this offseason. I think that's their plan. And that's why I understand why there's a lot of Jet fans who don't want to see wins. Because you could easily argue the best thing for the Jets to do is to lose games, get a better pick, and even if you have to trade up, it's less you're giving up from this war chest of assets you now have to get the quarterback you want. And by the way, if the Jets take a quarterback this year, they could do it again in 27. The Cardinals did it. Steve Wilkes got fired with Josh Rosen. They took Kyler Murray. Like, I'm at a point now where I've seen the Jets actually have talented teams and they still can't win because they don't have the quarterback. Take a quarterback every year till you have someone. Joe Leo, you're a Jet fan. If the Jets said, we're taking a quarterback this year, that guy stinks, new regime comes in 27, they take another quarterback, you're going to be that upset? No, right? I mean, we're at a point now where take the quarterback till you get a quarterback is how I look at it.
I'm apathetic to this whole thing. I'm not huge on Mendoza. I would love for like an Arch Manning dream scenario, but I know that that's not realistic. I'm not huge on this class. I know this is not popular, but I would punt on taking a quarterback this year.
So you want to suck next year?
And roll the dice. You don't need to suck next year. You could, get a journeyman quarterback.
Who? We tried that with Justin Fields. He couldn't play. Who's out there?
Jacoby Brissett.
He's under contract for another year. I mean, you're going to have to trade for assets for him.
We traded a 6th-round pick for Joe Flacco once upon a time.
I mean, honestly, Joe Flacco would be like, Tom Brady compared to Justin Fields'
reunion with Flacco.
Ugh.
Mac Jones.
Oh, Mac Jones. Mac Jones, if he became a Jet, every Jet fan that is listening knows this is so true. Mac Jones would stink with the Jets. There's no scenario where that guy would be good here.
But
I
want one of these guys who I know what the floor is, and the floor is okay. I don't want to roll the dice again because I don't believe anybody in this organization has the IQ to get a quarterback right. And I don't think Tanner Engstrom has the ability to, improve this offense with a rookie quarterback.
I'm not as down on Engstrom as you are. I think he's got to improve in short yardage. Like, watch the Chiefs yesterday, one of their 4th and 1s they ran where they were out of like a pistol set, play action, had like a guy leaking off to the right. Like, there's just so much more creativity when you watch all these teams around the league than what we've seen from the Jets for so long. So I'm with you. I think Engstrom at times is scheming guys open, and then the quarterback plays terrible, or someone misses an assignment, or Fields is holding onto the ball too long. Like, there's guys, I think, getting open, which is encouraging because it's not like the Jets have this elite unit. But, I mean, look, that's the big concern. Because you could get the quarterback right, as we've seen in Jet history, but the coaching could be so bad that guy doesn't have a chance.
That's the other thing, too. Do we know if Glenn – I have liked what I've seen from Glenn over the past 2 weeks, but are we sure that Glenn's the coach?
Are you concerned? So Ty Butler and I did the morning show yesterday on Turkey Day. Are you concerned that Aaron Glenn, when trying to quote this –
hello? You play to win the game.
He actually said this.
You play the game to win.
Are you concerned that he did not get the quote correct from the great Herm Edwards?
I'll have to ask Rich about that.
Well played. Let's get to more of your calls right now. Let's say hello to Chuck in Glens Falls. Hello, Chuck.
Hey, Jake. Nice talking to you.
What's up, Chuck? Appreciate you calling in.
Yes. I just wanted to give a quick football hot take. about the Jets, that the Jets lose out. At worst, they're going to be number 2, but most likely number 1. And everybody thinks they're going to get the quarterback with 1, but they actually trade back.
So you think the Jets will finish in the top 2, and they're going to actually trade back instead of just taking one of the quarterbacks?
Yeah, because they're Swiss cheese and they have so many holes that need filling.
They do have a lot of holes, but their biggest hole by far is quarterback. And you know what a great quarterback could do? It could mask a lot of your deficiencies. Plus, they have $100 million in cap space to fill some of these holes you're talking about.
I know, but the easy take is always, they're going to get it. I'm just trying to think outside the box.
So, look, you said it's a hot take, so I won't criticize you, but I think it is a silly take, Chuck Wagon. Chuck in Glen Falls there. Here's the reason why. If you are in position to get one of the quarterbacks, you need to take one. Because there's no guarantee that next year you're going to be in a spot to get one. Now, if your argument is they somehow don't like any of these quarterbacks, or maybe at that point the Jets, they brought in a veteran quarterback that nobody is foreseen being available, then maybe. But if you did that, right, like the Joe Burrow scenario that has been discussed, you would have to trade that number 1 or number 2 pick in that deal because Cincinnati would need to get a quarterback to replace Burrow or Dak or whoever the veteran that's available, C.J. Stroud, whoever it is that you want to suggest. So I just don't see it. I would, again, be shocked if the Jets don't end up using their first-round pick on a quarterback. I think the only question is, are they trading up or are they in a spot where they don't need to move to get their guy? And it's why if they lose out and finish with a top 2 pick, I can't sit here and say that's somehow the worst thing for the franchise. Oh, Aaron Glenn won 2 games. That means he's not a good head coach. So if he wins 4, he's a better head coach? Like, it's such an arbitrary line we're now drawing for evaluating the coach. Well, if Glenn finishes with 4 wins, he's a good coach. But if he finishes with only 2, he's the worst ever. Like, I don't know if my opinion of Aaron Glenn's going to change that much. I think he's had a bad year. I think he's been better of late. He's been better with the clock management, been better with the timeout usage. He's been better with the media, almost like someone got in his ear and said, hey, man, stop being so combative all the time over nonsense. It's a fight. You don't need the pick. You don't need the added scrutiny and attention on yourself. Like, I don't know. As a Jet fan who loves them, I understand why there's a lot of fans who are okay with them losing. I do. I mean, we've seen the Jets win meaningless games late in the year and try and sell us on culture in the past. It leads to nothing. Really, it leads to nothing. You got to get a quarterback. And you have all these assets. Ideally, you don't have to use them all to move up to get the quarterback. You could take the quarterback and then use all the assets that surround the quarterback with players and fill some of the holes that Chuck was talking about. He said something about a donut as well and a hole. And I don't know. I saw Joe Leo's mind just get in the gutter there. I was wondering. I'll leave it at that.
We got a break.
1 hour to go in our show. Jake Asman in for Dave and Rick. We're taking you till 10. We're going to make picks in the 9 o'clock hour. We're going to talk more about the Thanksgiving Day games. We got a Black Friday game. Jets, Giants, get to some baseball as well. Keep it right here. Jake Asman with you on 880 ESPN New York, the ESPN New York app, and the ESPN New York YouTube channel.